Yeah, me know. This is Kia Bamba, so we run the whole of Switzerland and the whole of Europe. And we run the whole of etc, etc. You don't know, devil shaman says so, me I bat them to the max. And it's like some idiot someone want to stop them from get a piece of the pie. Oh, I'm told disrespect, could go and die. Yeah, me know. Kia Bamba, them have dubs, we play fast, I play slow, them have flows. Like nobody knows, them kill soul, a sound clash and dance hall. And mash up stage shows, but some guys don't recognize.
Welcome to Only Friends on a Power Day, your one-stop spot for all things snow, mountain and travel. Get all you need to know about epic destinations, inspiring stories from local legends all around the globe, as well as creators, entrepreneurs, brands, owners and more. We are here to talk about what's hot, what's changing the game and what's incoming. So come along for the ride, froth out and let's have fun doing it. Today we have Tony McWilliam, absolute pioneer of the Australian industry. He's a former owner and creator of Faction Skis and Ghost Apparel, and now currently the director of Forward Apparel and Candide Skis. Welcome, Tony.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Amazing actually to kind of reconnect with a lot of Aussies in the last kind of year or two. I kind of think I'm going full circle from leaving Oz kind of 25 years ago to kind of starting to rebuild a lot of relationships back home and actually, become part of an industry which is growing and getting a broader international reputation, which is fantastic. So thanks for having me.
My pleasure, mate. I guess we first kind of crossed paths many years ago when I was lucky enough to get some Faction Skis under my feet. So thank you for that through old Darren Cockcroft. And I've had Dazza. And I've had old Alex Simpson always look after me from then on in. So you guys have always been great and obviously always loved Faction and still have plenty sitting here in my garage, which I still ride. So happy days.
Oh, that's pretty cool. No, thank you. It was really interesting actually because I started Faction in Europe actually, which was one of your questions was like, what is your biggest achievement? And I think starting a business in a foreign country with no previous background and not be able to speak the language or actually legally be there for a long period of time, I think must be one of the. Darren, who you started working with, was amazing, and he lives really close to one of my sisters back in Melbourne. And every so often I see his car go by, and I think he's still got the Faction sticker on the back window, even though he hasn't worked with us for a couple of years. But that's funny.
Awesome. Yeah, he was always full of energy, old Dazza. He's a good guy.
He's awesome. Yeah. And it was interesting. We were just talking about the fact that both of us spent a lot of time at Falls Creek and the relationship between Falls Creek and Adelaide and Falls Creek and Melbourne. And that was actually my first job in the snow sports industry. So it was a kind of an eye-opening time of going to uni. I did product design at uni, and then I couldn't find any work just after it finished. And the first thing that came up was a job as a lift attendant at Falls Creek. And I was like, or Towie, sorry, I should call it, given that we're from Falls. And it was like this whole complete different world. I hadn't done a lot of skiing in the past. It was always expensive. And the only time I've been skiing, my next door neighbors were part of a lodge up at Bulla. So, back in those days, they were all, the families were actually building the lodges, and you had to kind of get into like a timeshare situation. That was really the only way you could go skiing back in, this is kind of like the late 80s. And I learned to ski at like 14, 15. And I remember thinking that the lifties looked pretty cool. And so like when that job opportunity came up, I was like, oh yeah, why not?
Yeah.
And it was one of those things and you'll know what it is you go and work there and you earn, well, it was a long time ago, you earn like $5 an hour, living with 4 other guys in a very small room, and all your money gets spent at the bar, which is also owned by the Falls Creek Lift Company. So everything just kind of stays in this little circle.
And you get your $5 an hour to stand outside all day in the horrible weather or in the great weather and watch everyone else enjoy it whilst you're standing there helping them on and off the lift.
Yeah, but the funny thing is you're sitting there going, why are you going skiing in this weather, guys? Like, I get paid to be here, but you guys are paying to come up and like ski in rain and sleet. But I think, like, as Australians, I think we end up kind of going over the world because we discover this incredible community and culture and sport, and we want to know more of it and we want to experience more of it.
100%.
And I did. So, like, from Falls, I went and worked in a little store called Ski Recycle in Melbourne, which I don't know if it's there anymore, but that was kind of my first retail experience. And that was amazing because people used to come in, like families with kids, they'd come in, like leave their stuff on consignment. We'd sell it for them. We'd take a cut. they'd get money for their gear that their kids have grown out of, and then they'd be able to come back in and buy something else secondhand. And that was something that actually resonated with me for a long time, because you don't find rental out in Europe much. It's getting bigger, but that used to be kind of a staple of Oz. Oz and NZ ski industry is the rental industry, which we don't have a lot out here. But yeah, so did that and then went to Hotham. Because, well, everyone kind of says the skiing's better at Hotham, or did. I don't know anymore. But did Hotham and then went to Canada. So Big White, and then road trip to Fernie, spent time in Fernie. I had friends there who are still there. And then came back to Hotham, and I put in a proposal to the management there to start up guest services. So that is snow reports. I was running a newsletter for the staff, like a printed newsletter. Started up the staff races. This is kind of mid-90s, late 90s. Met a lot of people who are still in the industry now. Belinda Trembath, who's just moved to Whistler. She was GM at Perisher for a while too.
BT.
So a lot, So a lot of these people who kind of set this precedent within the industry. And at that point in time, there are a lot of French instructors, there are a lot of Italians, a lot of Swiss, a lot of Swedish, etc., kind of traveling down to Australia in the off season and doing winters. And so that was that first idea of like, oh, hang on, there's this other world there too. Maybe I should see something different. And end of 99, I'd spent a couple of years. So my background's in product design, but I also studied graphic design, web design, etc. In 99, my best friend's dad reversed into my car and wrote it off. But instead of getting the insurance, he decided to just give me a check because it was cheaper for him. So I spent that on a flight to Geneva, and I didn't really know where I was going. I didn't know what I was doing. There was a book called Where to Ski and Snowboard, and this is like pre-social media or anything. And I looked at all these resorts in Europe, and I was like, right, I'll go to St. Martin de Belleville. Looks really cute, like really old school, little villages and stuff like that. And I went down there, and it was early December and nothing was open. I was like, what? I had no idea. And I had some friends in Les Alpes, in the Southern Alps. And I just had a backpack and a pair of skis. I had no plans, no idea what I was doing whatsoever. And I ended up in Les Alpes, and that was really cool. So I met just a lot of people from a lot of different places. And that was kind of my first experience of French skiing, which is so completely different to Australian or North American skiing. Just this whole idea of like, well, you can do anything you want and go anywhere you like, and you better know what you're doing. There are ropes there, but you ask a patroller if it's all right to ski there, and they're like, nah, it's your problem, And it's just a different world. And then so I stayed in Les Alpes, then moved to London. I'd met an English girl at that point, as you do, and so I moved to London for the summer, and it was just at the time where the internet was booming, and I picked up a really good job building websites in London and earned, really good money back in the day. And at the time, the pound was like, £1 was worth $3. So I was like, this is great. Good happy days. And then I did 3 years of going from London to Les Arcs. And then that's when I really started kind of looking for better equipment, and also like painting skis. I'd paint my friend's skis, I'd paint my own skis, just because the graphics were crap at the time. There was nothing fat whatsoever. I remember I had a pair of Solomon Super Mountains, which were 78 mil wide, and that was it. And you're like, right, okay. And we'd hear these rumors of like atomic heli rides from like the heli groups out in BC and stuff like that, but you couldn't find anything. But the thing that really inspired me, I think, to start up Faction was I was good friends with Andrea Binning, so an old Australian freeride tour competitor. And her boyfriend was Stian Hagen at the time, who's Norwegian, but was a vocal athlete. And so he got all these skis, and I built her website, and then she'd pay me in Stian's skis. And that was the first of the vocal with the wizard on them. So they were all painted by an artist in the UK called Jamie Strawn, or Strachan, actually. I don't know the best way to pronounce that, who unfortunately passed away last year in Chamonix, which is very sad. He was one of the first people who you kind of went, oh, hang on, you can do something different with skis. They don't have to look crap. They can look like cool, and you can have amazing things. And so he painted a whole series of skis for vocal, which kind of started that process. And at the time, I kind of wasn't really thinking about starting a business or anything. I just started building relationships up in the UK ski scene, the French ski scene. I was doing a lot of world tour comps at the time, but I wasn't as good as a lot of the other guys like Guerin Chichery, Inac Baggio, a lot of the French crew who were just a level above me kind of thing. But I got this random email from a Chinese factory that was like, hey, we're looking for distributors in Europe for our ski brand. Like, we make skis. And it was the first thing I heard is like, oh, hang on, I could make skis. That can't be that hard. And I found a factory in just south of Evian who used to do all the prototyping for Movement. So
Yep.
a big kind of Swiss ski brand who are still around. And I was like, right on. Okay. And at the time I'd moved back to Melbourne and I was in my sister's spare bedroom in Fitzroy. And I was like, cool. Yeah, let's make some skis. And I just had a lot of friends and I'd done a lot of creative. I'd done a lot of photography. I kind of dabbled in a lot of things, sitting there kind of going, okay, right, hang on. I'll design some skis. Didn't really know what I was doing. Design some graphics. I'll build a website. I'll put some copy together. I've got these photos that I've been taking for the last few years. Let's just kind of put it all together and see what happens. And it was the same time that Armada was starting, Forefront with Matt Sturbans, all these cool brands. And there was really only one way to talk to a kind of a global community, and it was New Schoolers. I don't know if you guys know the New Schoolers forums, but back then it was
Matty's
just
a New
forums.
Schoolers nerd.
Spent many an hour on New Schoolers forums for sure.
Yeah, and it's still around.
Yeah, still
I
there.
was like, I was amazed. Yeah, I think Doug Bishop started has moved to Innsbruck or something now.
Yeah, great guy.
Yeah, so New Schoolers was like this way where you could actually start talking to a really captive audience. And this is what 2003 is when I started it. And so the company was registered in Melbourne. Didn't really know what I was doing, but I thought I'd register a brand name or something. So I did that in Melbourne, bought the domain. And actually, one of my good friends at the time was a journalist who worked in the UK who competed on the World Tour again with me. This is pre-Freeride World Tour. This is IFSA. So there was like a European one and a North American one. It was all very fragmented. And he just emailed a lot of his friends. I emailed a lot of my friends and I sold like 50 pairs of skis in just via kind of word of mouth and stuff like that in that first year, which is amazingly lucky, frankly.
Were you building them yourself at this point, Tony, or were you having them manufactured you were designing them and then having them manufactured somewhere and then testing them? Or did you just kind of go, I reckon I know what I'm building, I'll draw up some CADs and send them off and what we get is what we'll sell? Exactly
that first year. And they were all too soft, but that's another story. But yeah, I didn't, product design kind of teaches you how to problem solve, and it teaches you design thinking, it teaches you process, and it teaches you about a lot of different material properties, etc. So I can go straight into a factory in most places and understand, it doesn't really matter what industry, but I can understand what they're talking about and I can understand the limitations of what they're trying to do and what I need to be able to get what I want. And so I designed the product. The factory, we didn't do prototypes, we went straight to production of it was 44 pairs. I remember that. And I was in Australia doing all this via email, and I'd split up with my girlfriend, and I had a lot of friends in Verbier, some from Falls Creek still, some I'd made over the years. And so I was looking for a place that was big enough to support me work-wise. I was doing a lot of graphic design work there, so I was like, I need to go to somewhere that's big enough that's actually going to have the opportunity to do some design work for people. And so I just randomly chose Verbier, and I had no idea about permits. I had no idea about visas. I had no idea where I was going to stay. I was like, I'll just do that. And I managed to find someone who lived in Verbier who knew of an apartment to rent. I rented this apartment. And then Christmas Eve, I rented a car, drove over to the factory in Evian, and it was like 6 o'clock at night. And they go, yeah, well, we've got these 45 pairs of skis, but you need to declare them at the border and pay duties on them and tax if you're importing them into Switzerland. I'm like, what are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about. And they're like, well, you're going to get stopped at the border. So fine, do whatever you like, whatever, just go away. And it was Christmas Eve and the border was packed and they didn't even look. They just kind of just let me go straight through. And I'm like, you would never be able to do that again. You would never be able to do that again. The borders here now are so strict. Well, there is one pass that you can go by still if you
just in case you need it.
Just in case you need it, give me a call. No, and then that was, I was just so lucky, frankly. And I was looking back at your questions, Austin, they're really good. I was just so lucky with the friends that I'd made along the way. And this group of people who just loved skiing, they responded to what I was trying to do, which was just make interesting graphics on skis that were fatter and twins as well, suited the type of skiing we were doing and trying to get out in the mountain and ski bigger and faster, and freestyle was coming up as well. And this is pretty much the same time as, Solomon introduced the 1080. K2 had the Enemy, Rossi had the Power Air, but that was it. That were your only options if you were looking for a twin in Europe. And it was just, it was a bit like right place, right time, I guess. And I think people discount luck when they're building businesses, but you need a lot of luck and you need a lot of friends. They say like it takes a town to raise a child, and like it definitely
takes
takes
a village
a town,
or whatever. Yeah,
it takes a village to it takes a village more to build a business. And so that's how I ended up in Verbier. And I didn't. So a friend of mine wanted to start up a magazine here, and this is just pre-Facebook, etc. So there was no way of people knowing what was going on. And Verbier is really quite multicultural from a perspective of there's loads of Americans and Swedes and Scandis and Norwegians and Japanese and Chinese and Australian, everything. So at the time, there was no one way of people finding out what was going on. There was no real kind of sense of kind of community for the expats and the Swiss who live here. And we started a magazine, which is still going like 20 years later. So that was something that me and my friend did. And that was the way I survived, frankly. I was doing graphic design for a couple of bars. I started this magazine, which we sold advertising in, but it was free. And that's literally how I survived for the first 10 years. I didn't get a salary out of Faction till 2012. And yeah, that would. And the other thing I think I asked in your question was like, what do I feel at my biggest achievement and wins with Faction on reflection? I think one is just survival. I don't really know how I did it looking back. There were days when we had an office here, and there were days when we were literally running away from the permit inspector. He'd come in one door and we'd like run out the other and onto the balcony and stuff like that. I think. And so we established the business. I met an American guy here who had more of a business background than I did. I didn't really have any business background. And he kind of set up the basic structure and helped me out with understanding things like budgets and cash flow planning, trademark, stuff like that. And we established the business in 2007 here in Switzerland. And then, for the first, literally to 2012 was when we got our first major investment. And I know, Austin, you got some questions about investment later on and board members and stuff like that. So that was the start of this process of bringing investment on board from different places, angel networks, individuals, VC firms, and it was kind of a mix of investment at the time. And that was the first time we created a board and it being serious. And that was the first time I got a salary and everything was made legally correct. And then kind of grown from there. But really, most of it was through friends. And Austin, you probably, I mean, you dealt with Alex Simpson, you probably dealt with Beanie as well.
Yep.
Back in the day, who was a marketing manager there, who's one of my best friends. And one of the rewarding things about that whole time was we brought on a lot of people as interns and things like that. And now, one of our interns, a girl who started as intern, is now global head of PR for Scott. Another is global head of e-commerce at the same group. A lot of guys have gone into North Face, Picture, etc. So just like having this opportunity to kind of work with people in the early stages of their career and then have them go on to actually continue and grow into these bigger roles and bigger businesses has been incredibly rewarding, I must say, kind of looking back on it. And just the relationships you build. I mean, you guys know what it's like to, go and travel to different places and then years later or whatever, to meet up with them again in different places and to share that same love of the culture and the community that we have, no matter where you are. Sorry, I just realized I've talked for about 15 minutes straight.
No, that was very good.
So good.
Tony, I didn't even have to ask questions. You just answered them.
Sorry.
No, thanks, mate. That's really good insight to how I think you've carved a path for yourself, and just, I think a lot of business owners would have a similar story of like, what the hell am I doing? And, those who are successful generally just finds a way of working out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's this word that I didn't, a friend of mine's a psychologist, an athlete coach, and he introduced this word resilience to me a couple of years ago. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, no, you have resilience. You have the ability to have these things fuck up in your business or wherever, and you just find a way to get around it. You find a solution. And I never really thought of it. I never really thought of myself as being stubborn or driven or any of those things. I was like, I'm just having fun and I'm creating products that other people seem to respond to and, inspire them to get out and do something that they love. And that's what really drove me. And I guess maybe I'm quite stubborn and quite driven when you actually talk about it. But yeah, I'd never heard of this word resilience before until a couple of years ago. And now it's kind of everywhere. Like, yeah, that's what you need. You've got to navigate the disasters and just keep going regardless,
Yeah, I
which
think
is true,
you've got to
which
be
is true.
a certain type of person to have what it takes to start a business and go for it. And generally, with that kind of mindset comes resilience, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also it's quite difficult being I don't like the word founder. I don't like the word entrepreneur. I think they're kind of words that other people use to identify a certain character trait or something. I don't know. I've never been big fans of them, but like it is quite alienating and it's quite lonely starting your own business. And I think it's quite essential to have a lot of friends around you who maybe they don't relate to what you're doing, but they're supportive of what you're doing. And I really was just lucky that Verbier was an amazing community of people. And I don't think before I found an environment that was that welcoming and accepting of where you were from, what you were doing. I know this sounds really elite or naive or something, but back in the 90s in Australia, you were either a skier or a snowboarder, and you never went to the same bar or the same. You just didn't really socialize together or something. I don't know what the hell it was. But like you come here and it was like, "Oh, whatever, I don't give a shit. And like it's just everyone here was supportive of what I was doing. And I had friends who were photographers, and friends who were filmers. I had friends who were athletes, and it was just something that they were kind of like, oh, wicked, you're doing something. We want something to do. Like, let's be a part of it and let's get involved. And I think you can't discount that in running a business or building it, or even if you're working for another brand, you guys, both GMs, etc., of brands and businesses. And even when you're running those businesses, you need those friends around and you need those people who are supportive no matter what your role is.
Yeah, having the nous yourself is one thing, but having
You're frozen.
I guess the people skills and maybe the fortune to be able to surround yourself with the right people, create the right relationships and onboard and bring those people, on the journey with you is as much a part of being a founder or a successful business person, I think, as just about any else.
Very well said. So, Tony, I guess we should get on to some more juicy questions. As I said, I think you've been really quite open and honest recently about industry and some truths with, your past in faction and some of the traps that the outdoor industry seem to be falling into. What's made you decide to go down this honest route? And aside from being a huge advocate for the industry, what are your goals moving forward? What do you want to change and influence?
I just cut out on me for a couple of minutes, so I missed the last bit, but I assume you've gone on to the third question on your list of questions, Austin. Sorry. Matty, are you there?
Glitchy connect.
You there? Are we back? Can you hear me? You back? Can you hear me?
We gotcha.
Sorry. Right. Yeah. Sorry. It cut out there for a bit. So I think, I was kind of guilty when I first got on LinkedIn, really, when that started, of doing a lot of bragging. Everything's kind of like, well, I'm only going to talk about the things that I think make me look impressive to other people. And I've got kind of sick of it. And I don't think it helps people. I don't think I think what people need in the world right now is the ability to share what they're going through, what they're trying to achieve, and actually kind of go, can people help? And so I and I don't really have anything left to prove. I've grown a global business. I, mentor and advise other brands. I'm still lucky enough to work in the industry and to be creating some great products and things. We'll get into that later. But I kind of realized that there are a lot of people starting businesses who know as little as I knew when I started a business. And I think what's really key is that we have the ability to share the type of knowledge that can help that person navigate the issues that you face building a business. And if you're a creative or, someone who just has an idea, and I don't just mean, when I say creatives, I don't just mean artists or graphic designers or whatever. I mean, people who actually come out with an idea and say, hey, I've got a vision for something that I want to do and I want to create and build. Those people, in my experience, tend to have very little business background or training. And I had none. I had absolutely none. And what happened in my case is, even though I learned a lot over the years just from working with the industry and seeing what happens and working alongside people, I left a lot of the business side of things, so shareholding, equity, debt, cash flow, etc. I left that to other people. And in the end, I paid a big price for that. And I kind of wish that I just knew the type of things I should be looking into when I started the business, because maybe it would have meant that I didn't make the same mistakes. And so for me, having the ability to just have a network of people to say, okay, right, if you're starting this type of business, one thing you might need to know is this. Because I don't really believe that listening to people go, if you want to be successful, this is what you have to do, is actually very useful. That's their path. That's the way that they've managed to achieve what they call success, whether that's financial or personal or whatever. But I think each person's path is so unique. You can't discount luck. That I just hope that if I'm just sharing the challenges that I've faced and the mistakes that I've made along the way, hopefully other people will go, right, maybe I should not do that. Maybe I should ask. Maybe I should find mentors or advisors in the industry who have experience. And maybe that'll help me. Because I mean, I definitely took the long way to start a business. And I took the long way.
If there was a guaranteed
kind of
roadmap, though, then everyone would do it, right? Like that's if there was just a little read the book and everyone would be successful, then it would be a very different journey, wouldn't it? An easier one, at least.
Well, exactly. Well, I think that's maybe why people go and study MBAs, because they think that'll be a surefire way to actually start a successful business. But I don't think that helps either, frankly. And I think also, like, there's a weird kind of cliche around the idea of being a founder. People, for some reason, and I didn't really understand this, but people kind of want to be called a founder. People want to kind of go, yeah, I started this. This is mine kind of thing. And I feel like it's only something that's happened in the last 10 years or so. Whereas I see creative founders and I see people like, my background, my design process background is more about solving problems. Like a business ends up a business because you've solved a problem that enough people have to justify paying for whatever that solution you're offering is. This is just from my opinion and perspective. My comments may not be legally
I'll agree with that opinion.
Cheers, Matty.
Yeah, back you on that, 100%.
Yeah, product market fit and all that kind of stuff. Like, if no one has the problem that you're trying to solve, then no one's going to buy what you're selling them, really. And I think what it's kind of the industry is, as you identify, the industry is going through a massive upheaval at the moment. And a lot of these brands who started out at the same time as me have starting to face challenges or have already gone under. I mean, Armada went under 10 years ago, 5, 7 years ago, whatever. We nearly bought them, but in the end they got bought by Atomic, who they owed the most money to. And we're seeing, and Forefront, I mean, Matt Servants, wasn't able to continue Forefront. That got bought by Jason Leventhal from Line and J Skis. And it's just, you see these kind of things happening and you're like, oh, shit, come on, everyone lost out. Armada, everyone lost out. All the athletes who started that brand, they all lost out. And I think that's where I see the biggest loss, I guess, is these people with great ideas starting these businesses, and for whatever reason, people getting involved in those businesses like Black Crows, and then getting to a point where it's like, well, shit, for whatever reason, etc., they haven't been able to continue. And so I think just trying to share some of the reality of that business world and hopefully help some people on the way is what I'm kind of here to do.
Yeah, I feel that I called it the Black Crows bombshell that you put out on LinkedIn. That really blew my mind, because you look at Black Crows at the moment and, from my experience in Japan, the skis are everywhere. People really getting behind the brand. It looks like it's going really, really well. To see that that spreadsheet that you shared and see that they're trending in that direction is just like, why is this happening to something that looks like a quite successful, popular brand right now? And I think that's it's an awesome insight to give people, and it's very truthful, which is very refreshing. But
it's gutting as well.
Yeah.
Camille and Bruno, who started that just around the same time I started with Faction, we'd see each other at all the trade shows, and they were super focused. They knew what they wanted, they knew what they were doing. They brought a really different aesthetic to the products. They were bringing a really kind of modern branding philosophy into skis, which hadn't been really done before. Georgi, the designer for that, is amazing. They were some of the guys. I mean, we were sitting there in the trade shows and we're like, yeah, we're in 42 countries now. We're in Lithuania and Croatia and shit like that. And they're like, no, we're in France. And they're like, what are you doing, you idiots? We're going to dominate one country and then we're going to move to the next country and then we're going to move to the next country. And I was like, oh, that's weird. But they were right. And then the problem is what I'm learning, the problem is, and there are a lot of parallels between what happened to Black Crows, or what's happening to Black Crows, and what happened to Faction, is that to generate cash and to bring money into a business, you kind of start telling these stories, you put together these financial forecasts, etc., and go through your due diligence process. But you kind of need to show growth to get investors to come on board. You need to go, yeah, we're going to be this amount of money in this amount of years. And the problem is to attract investment. I'm not saying you embellish the truth, but you set high targets, and you hope to achieve those targets. But I think what happens is there's a lot of people who came into the outdoor industry and are still coming into the outdoor industry with these ideas of like, we're going to create the next VF, we're going to create the next North Face, we're going to create the next Vans. And like what people don't seem to realize is that those businesses took 50 years to get to the state that they are in now.
And it certainly wasn't as saturated in the industry as it, then as it is now either.
Yeah, they had niches which were which no one else was in really at the time. And so the industry is much more highly competitive. The people who are investing are expecting a higher return quicker. What tends to happen is that the management teams take on a lot of debt as well. And you take a lot of debt hoping that people will, so this might get quite technical, but things called convertible notes. So you take a loan basically, and there's an agreement that that person at the end of the loan will convert it to equity. And what happens is businesses do this every year. We raise money every year because we have annual cycles of production, development cycles, sales cycles, etc. So you fall into this trap of just thinking annually. And when you don't hit a target or something goes a bit off or something, whatever you like, go, oh shit, we need more money. And if you need more money, you have to go to market, and maybe your existing investors will invest, maybe they won't. And so what tends to happen over time, what happened to Faction and what looks like is happening to Black Crows, is you just rack up an immense amount of debt because you have to invest to scale a business quicker than what maybe naturally would happen. And this is a topic I get into with a lot of people that I mentor and advise, is that a lot of them are expecting unrealistic growth from an industry which in the past used to be stable, but isn't as stable as it was anymore. You look at COVID, you look at the repercussions of that on the global industry, and that has completely destroyed the decade that I managed to grow Faction through, which was consistent. You knew what people were going to order every year. You went to retailers rather than D2C, and that gives you stable growth and reliable cash flow. And now brands are like, well, I think I'm going to double my D2C growth, so I'm just going to make the product and hope it sells. And if it doesn't sell, it sits on the market and they're clearing stock and they're losing money and ending up in more debt. So I think also one of the other things that you get in the industry is that people invest a lot based on passion grounds rather than maybe, I don't want to say, like if you're investing, you're smart, you've made your money somehow and you're a smart person, like let's not discount that. But you also tend to get people who invest in the outdoor industry because it looks fun, because they get to tell their friends that they own a ski brand. And I don't mean this in a negative way. These people are fantastic and they have passion. But what tends to happen is that you get people crowding into the space who maybe don't have experience in the industry, experience in building product-led brands rather than software or fintech or whatever. And it's a very different, and I'm learning it's a very different world from a lot of the traditional spaces where people invest into.
Yeah.
So we have, at Faction, we had a lot of investors from VC groups in the UK, people who didn't have anything to do with the outdoor industry. They were just hedging their bets, angel networks, individuals, as I said. And a lot of those people just invested because they were like, this is exciting and fun. And you see that in crowdfunding a lot too. Brands will go out to crowdfund.
Do you think those guys have been misled by the way brands are representing their anticipated growth trajectory, or do you think these VC guys and all that are just throwing in money, sort of being like, I don't really care about it, we can invest here, we can invest there, and then when they see that slower rate of growth or that more volatile return because of Mother Nature and because of COVID and because of lead times and all these other things, that they're then like, hang on, we invested, we thought we were going to get a bit more than this, but we were just playing around, but now we kind of want our money back as quickly as possible because it's not. We want to put it where it's working harder.
Excuse me. Yes. And the problem is that generally there's no way to get your money back. If you've invested and you've bought equity, if you have debt and you want that debt back, you can call that debt at any time. And that's where businesses face collapse and bankruptcy. But if you've invested in a business and so a lot of VC funds just invest to diversify their holdings, to reduce their risk. They diversify across a lot of different categories, a lot of different industries, not just outdoor. And so for them, it just makes their portfolio look a bit more interesting. And we definitely So one of the VC groups invested in us was definitely, that was their thing. But the problem is that if you've invested a lot of money in a business and the business isn't doing well, you can't turn around to the global market and go, oh, we fucked up, we need help. You've got to go, no, this business is still going to be great. We just need more people to hit our target. And so the targets keep getting higher.
Yeah.
And this is the big problem. So I left Faction 7 years ago, and my biggest problem with the board and the current management team is there doesn't seem to be any sense of, guys, actually, we need to be realistic about what's happening here and what's happening in this business. They're still going out to the industry and going, this is going to be the next VF. We just need another 10 million this year.
Yeah, the lies keep getting bigger and bigger.
The lies keep getting bigger, but I understand why they're doing it, because they face losing everything. We have some individuals who's put in a couple of million, 10 million, and they're like, they can't really turn around and go, this is stuffed. Can someone else come and put some more money in? They've got to go, no, it's going to be great. It's still going to be great. We just need a bit more money. And it's frustrating. And it means that a lot of companies kind of put out this face of bravado, and I still see the pitch decks and I still see the investment, proposals, and they're just unrealistic and they're just not going to survive. And what will happen is someone will come in, a VC company will come into Black Crows, it'll come into Faction, it'll buy it for nothing, and then it'll just continue it, like what happened to Rafa. VC company comes in, buys it with no experience in the industry, and the brand becomes stagnant, and it just becomes this kind of thing which exists. And
or the original founder comes back in and buys it back again, and we're going to see a full circle moment for you, Tony, somewhere down the track.
Well, if I had the money, maybe. Yeah, unfortunately, don't know. I mean, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, the situation I'm in now. So running Candide Skis, or brand director at Candide Skis, and then running Forward. Both those brands have come from the kind of the whirlwind collapse of Faction. I started what became Forward Apparel in 2017. And then after I left, they continued it for a couple of years. And then they got to a point 2 years ago where they're like, shit, it hasn't worked out as we wanted it to, where the core business is running out of money. We can't afford to continue at this anymore. So they just basically left it. They left the stock to the factory, and the factory called me up and went, what the hell do we do? And so I went, yeah, okay, I'll come in and help. And the same thing with Candide, he just got to a point where he wasn't happy with the relationship there, and decided to go out on his own, which is horrendous to have your main athlete, just leave a business that he's been with for 10 years. I signed him in 2010, I guess, and we've been good friends ever since.
And had so much success with Audi ads or all that kind of stuff, like so many viral videos, and it's such an icon. And, don't think that there's been ever a skier who's been seen like that on such a big scale, doing those day in a life of Candide or whatever videos, and skiing the Great Wall of China and all of that. Like, that's a huge loss.
Yeah, exactly. It's in some ways, it's great because I get to actually help turn these brands into, the kind of, well, for Forward, the vision I originally had for the brand. So I'm quite lucky there in one way. For Candide, I'm just helping him execute his vision, the products. But actually, interestingly, I've designed skis for a long time. And this range of skis without, Austin, I don't know, Matty, I don't know if you've had a chance to ride them, but actually having a few years off designing skis, because it was an annual process, you're constantly in a design development stage. Having a couple of years off and not really thinking about it. And then when Candide called me up and what he wanted to do, was like, oh yeah, actually, hang on. There's been a few, I actually learned quite a few things, not designing skis constantly, having a time to think about it. And what we've managed to do with this new range, sorry, I'm looking over there because that's what I've got them all lined up, is actually just create these products, which even though they're hyper focused on what some would kind of say a specific niche in the market, like freestyle, freeride, backcountry, etc., they're way more versatile than anything I'd managed to design in the past, just because I had time. I had time to try different things. I had time to work on the shapes and the rocker and the camber lines and the materials and the flexes and make them work together in a way that I just never had the time before. So that I'm finding really great, actually. Maybe that's it. Maybe these will be the last skis I ever designed, guys.
Don't say that, Tony.
I've skied them, but you just inspired me to get back on them and have another ride. So I'm going to have to do that, Tony.
Someone needs to start bringing them into Australia. I don't think we've got anyone here doing it. So it could be an opportunity there for someone.
Rod and Sophie up at Future Sport are bringing
They
them
are
in.
doing it. Okay, cool.
Yeah, which is awesome. So we'll start seeing them in the market now, which is fantastic. And then, Japan, actually, we've got a distributor there. And actually, I'll be out in Hakuba in end of February. I'm organizing an art exhibition there with a Canadian Japanese artist and a couple of other guys. Eric Pollard's going to have a piece there. And then there's a London-based illustrator called Sam Taylor, who's amazing, who we're putting together kind of a whole exhibition there in Hapo 1 with Intuition Liners.
Awesome.
So,
Cool.
you know what?
we
I've
got
never
them we got them
skied
in
in
rhythm
Japan.
halfway through the season when they came out. We were like, we need to have these in the shop.
I think never having skied in Japan is bigger than the Black Rose bombshell.
You know, I've been to Japan 3 times in the summer. I've been to Tokyo a lot. I've been to the resorts there in the summer, and I've never skied it. But Verbier's got everything. It really is one of those resorts where you kind of like, you want to ski high alpine stuff, you want to rappel into stuff, you could do that. You want to ski trees about, you could do that. And so I've been a bit lazy, frankly. And I traveled so much for faction, trade shows and everything, that I just did not want to travel much anymore. And then, we were going to go out last winter at the end of January, and the weather started getting warm. And my friend was like, nah, I'm calling it. We're not going. It's going to get rain and warm and everything. And then it turned into one of the biggest bloody Februaries and Marches ever. Shit.
Yes, it was the first Japanese,
Missed that one.
it was the first northern winter I'd missed in 17 years. And probably the first Japanese winter I'd missed in 12 years or something. And it was the best in 60 years. You can all thank me for how good last winter was in Japan.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't come back, Aussie. That's what they're screaming from.
Don't come back. Yeah, exactly. No, and it looks like, you guys look like you're having a mental season in Australia right now. It just seems like the snow keeps coming there too, which is fantastic.
Been a whopper. And,
as
and
I said,
needed.
we were up at the demos, Tony, and it rained and was windy. And then as we left, it turned to snow and dumped like 80, 50 plus centimeters. So
unfortunately,
again, you can thank me for that one as well.
You got to have those horrible days to get the good ones. I was speaking to Shane Carter from Burton the other day about the horrendous weather we had at Mount Buller, and he was like, you know what, Matty, we got to have days that are that, but that's the weather that brings the snow. And yes, it starts with, a lot of the time it starts with rain and it starts with sleet and whatnot, but that's what brings us the snow. So we've got to be as thankful for those days as we do for the good ones.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly. I'll tell you what, if you can, I was just going to say, if you learn to ski in Australia and you can survive Australian winters, you can survive anywhere. You can ski ice, you can ski moguls, you can ski 100-kilometer-hour winds. You don't care.
It's a good product testing.
People here are like, oh, it's fantastic. It's amazing. Obviously, you don't quite get the powder that we get here, but just, and it's so different. Like in the eucalypts and the gums and stuff like that, it is so different and it's so unique an environment. It's Austin, in your questions, you kind of had this comment about, is the industry thriving or is it going through problematic stages? And I don't know, like last year when you see what happened to the Australian winter, you were like, oh God, is this it? Is this the end? Kind of thing. And global warming is something that's always on our minds. And you see the weather changing here and you see the high alpine environment change a lot, the glaciers change a lot, etc. And it is concerning. But also, I'd love to hear your perspective, because from my perspective, although the industry is going through a hard time globally, it's always shifting and it's always changing. So I don't feel like, we're seeing attendance in resort go up massively year on year. We see shifts, but there's always shifts. There's shifts about where the snow's falling. There's shifts about who's participating and how they're participating and where they come from. So I'd love to hear your kind of background on that, or your perspective on that.
I personally think that it seems like Australia's had a pretty good winter, and this last storm that come through was probably crucial to getting a bit of icing on top, which was really needed after 2 terrible winters. Unfortunately, New Zealand hasn't had a great winter, which is the double-edged sword. And I believe one of the big retail shops is pretty much going under at the moment, which is not great news. But yeah, I think, as you said, what I think really needs to happen in Australia, and which is, what a lot of this podcast is about, is they really need to bring some fresh blood and that next generation into really wanting to be involved in the industry and realize that there is a career, and not just do 1 or 2 winters and go do uni because mum and dad think that's the right thing. And I'd really just like to see that investment and that want to grow our industry and for people to make a life out of it really being nurtured, as opposed to everyone's replaceable kind of attitude which the resorts have, and just using people as, soldiers to get a job done for a winter or two and on to the next. Because the next generation's smart, and they're not going to care. They're not going to work their ass off for someone who doesn't care about them, and they'll go and do their own thing. Like, what do you think, Matty?
Yeah, and I think you're spot on in that regard. We've talked about it a few times in terms of nurturing people's talents to retain them in the ski industry, and whether that's, if you're an accountant and you love skiing, go and be an accountant for a cool ski brand or for an outdoor brand that you love. And I think, if we look at the broader industry globally, as you say, Tony, it's like participation's up. I think it's just one of those things where it seems to be common in endemic sports where when things are tough, particularly in something like skiing where so many people, it's a holiday as opposed to something they're doing year round or for a full season, spending just goes down sort of, alongside, cost of living pressures and all these other sorts of things that we're hearing about globally. But if participation is up, you have to sort of look at that and go, we have a healthy industry here, right? Like eventually, whether all brands survive and whether all retail stores survive, I think, I just lost my screen, but I think that the industry itself and the future of snow sports is super strong. And I think, the dynamic of consumption and what's needed to survive and thrive in bricks and mortar retail versus D2C. And, there's some challenges around things like that. But from my perspective, you go, if participation is up, then, things will come good once the macroeconomic factors sort of, even out and plateau, and everyone find themselves in a slightly better position.
And you can really see at the resorts at the moment, Tony, here that there is a change in the demographic. There's a lot of Chinese brands and clothing up on the hill, and a whole new world of people really getting into skiing. And even Matty's got, we were calling him a sugar glider on the weekend up at Bulla because he's got this giant, massive Chinese brand suit, and that's what he used to wear back in 2006, and it's gone full circle with that baggy stuff, and Matty loves that.
Yeah. I think that's a good point too. Seeing a much more multicultural consumer for snow sports as well, which I know this is a very contentious thing around snow play and how resorts facilitate, particularly in Australia, how you facilitate snow play and people that potentially aren't paying for a lift ticket and buying their food and all that sort of stuff on the hill. But we have to encourage people to come up and want to be in the alpine environment and play with the snow, because in 2 or 3 years' time, that they will be back if they've had a great time, and they might rent a pair of skis. They might get a lesson, and if they do that, they'll probably get hooked, and then they're probably coming back with all of their family or their mates, and they stay for a week, and then they are eating out. And then we've seen it with different multicultural groups over the course of the last probably 20 years or so, particularly here in Australia. And I think embracing that and making sure that anyone that comes into the alpine environment feels welcomed and has a really good time is a key factor in the success, certainly of the Australian industry for the long term.
Yeah.
No, I think that's
staff
definitely
looked
global.
after, they'll provide good service, right? So that's really important.
There's a lot of topics that we're kind of crossing on here, like staff and careers, and the way that, because you guys are in an environment where you have a parent company which tends to own everything on the mountain, which is unique to Australia and North America, really, because over here, it's just a village which happens to have a lift in it. And so there's all these businesses, and the lift company doesn't really own anything apart from the lifts, and that's about it. Maybe they run a ski school. That's it. But there's another 20 ski schools as well. It doesn't own any of the restaurants, doesn't own any of the bars, doesn't own any rental places, etc. So there isn't this issue of like, well, it's one company's philosophy or kind of nothing, and it's one company setting the prices or nothing. But what you do tend to get, and what I've been frustrated with over the years, I mean, back in the 90s when I was working at Hotham, I was like, why aren't we building snow parks? You're seeing people start to do things like freestyle, and you're like, we need to build a snow park, or we need to get into mountain biking. And they were like, nah. And like now, okay, so Verbier's got a downhill mountain bike course on it now, and 15 years later, it now is kind of embracing all year round tourism. But then you have this other aspect too, which is where outdoors as a whole is starting to lose its kind of core, gore core and all that stuff, like its core status I think a lot of people are struggling to adapt to that. And a lot of people are struggling with this idea that like, oh, well, Zara does skis now. And I don't know, do you have Zara in Australia? I don't even know.
We do.
But, okay, so
yeah,
Zara
yeah.
is like it's like a Spanish fashion brand. And we had a pop-up next door with all their ski brand. So sorry, their outerwear. And part of me is like, like I've been in the industry a long time. I'm kind of like, I'll go away kind of thing. But at the same time, you're like, that's how the industry is going to survive. It's by addressing a different audience, which maybe isn't from our background, but we have to be open to this whole idea that actually fashion and outerwear and technical and sport are all going to cross over as they are, and they're all going to get more diverse. And actually that's an opportunity for us rather than kind of like sticking our heels in the ground and kind of going, no, I'm only selling to, core stores or core people.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a challenging topic. And then Austin, you brought up the topic about careers in the industry, and you would actually think like, does Vail Australia have a global kind of feeder program to take people from Australia into North American resorts and vice versa? Because you kind of feel like that would be an
It's a
opportunity.
no-brainer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not definitely not as robust as it should be. That's for sure. Or
Yeah.
could be.
I mean, I ended up in Big White because it had owners. The owners at Hotham, I think they just sold it or something 2 years ago. But there was just so many staff going backwards and forwards to Big White. It was like, it was just easy,
Yeah.
well, comparatively. But yeah, I mean, and you talked about, Austin, about this idea about how do we get, where do you get investment in outdoors, or where do you get investment into outdoor brands, and how do we make sure they're thriving and surviving? And I think one of the topics we brought up was this thing about that you get a lot of people investing in the outdoor industry out of passion, which I think is incredibly lucky. Trying to find people who are interested in what you're doing is really difficult when you're starting a business, even though on one hand we kind of discount people who get involved in businesses because of passion. That's a massive asset as well.
Sweet. That was actually what I was just about to ask you. So we're in sync here. So on that, is there anything coming next with Candide Skis and Forward Outdoor Apparel? Is there anything we should be watching for on the horizon, or I'm guessing
It's actually, yeah, baby steps. I mean, it is, I've been running kind of, or brand director of both these brands now for kind of 2 years or so, and it's really kind of starting from scratch. But I'm lucky that if I need a distributor in China, I can call someone up and go, hey, wait, do you want to distribute this? If I need an athlete in, Breckenridge, I can go, hey, Devin, do you want to, can I play you some gear? Do you want to do some shoots for me? Yeah, it is an incredible, privilege to be able to actually kind of create new brands or build new brands from scratch when I have the relationships I've built over 20 years. So I'm incredibly lucky with that. But in terms of actually the products and what we're trying to do, so Candide, we're about to release. So this is the first of the park ski. So there's a 90 mil waves park ski, which originally he didn't want to do because he was like, I might ski. I ski on a 120. I don't want to do a 90. And then I design them and build them and send them to him. And he's like, oh, okay, actually, these are really good. Okay, fine. I'll ski on these. These are great. And we just been great. And then, with Forward talking about this crossover between industries, a 26-27 collection, which we're just finishing design for now, are going into, we start kind of the sales season for 26-27 in October when we have our general sales meeting. So we're really taking this opportunity to combine what we're seeing in all these kind of subcultures like Backside Rabbit, snowboard focused brands, because Forward is ski and snowboard, and actually take what's happening in streetwear and combine it into technical goods, which you don't tend to see there. You tend to get kind of streetwear influenced brands that don't have a technical background, or technical brands which don't have any idea of actually what's kind of happening on the ground level really in the industry. So I'm pretty privileged in a way that I'm able to take what's happening in the Southern Hemisphere, what's happening in Japan, what's happening in Scandinavia, wherever, and actually combine those into products which I actually really think are really going to be great. So I think that's the thing I'm kind of excited in, is still being able to build products which hopefully will inspire people to just go out and enjoy doing what they do when you're getting on the hill.
Is it still does designing, you've obviously been doing it for a long time, but knowing that whatever you design then goes under Candide's feet, does that bring you a huge amount of joy or a significant amount of trepidation or a little bit of both? Because I reckon it's a blessing to have someone like Candide testing your product, but by the same token, it's sort of like, oh, I better get this one pretty spot on.
But yeah, that's right. I mean, like Candide is completely uncompromising, and there is nothing that gets made without his approval or his, once over. I mean, last week we had meetings and I stuffed up. No, I can't say that because we're about to release it. Everything's perfect. No, but I stuffed up one of the early prototypes, and he's sitting there kind of going, that tip shape there, I don't like that tip shape. We need to fix that. So I was like, yeah, amazing. Back to prototypes. But I refuse to ski with him now because it's just that thing where you're like, if you ski with Candide, he just is on another level, and just on a traverse, just on a track, whatever. And the thing, he's just popping off. He's still he just turned 40, but just the ability that he has and that kind of innate talent that he's built up over 30 years of skiing is just incredible. And it's still really inspiring, and I couldn't really have anyone better to work with and to design skis for, because there are a lot of great athletes in the world, I will say that. There are a lot of fantastic skiers that I've worked with and that are out there doing amazing things, but for the type of product I design and what I want to do, Candide is perfect. So I'm quite lucky there.
He's the goat.
The one true goat.
He still is. And it's funny, like when we started working with him, he was just about to turn 30, I think. No, it must have been just before that. And we're a bit like, oh shit, if 30, that's quite late. His career's probably over. There's a bit of a risk. Maybe we only work together for a couple of years kind of thing. And, like 10, 15 years later, like he's still skiing better than ever. In his own terms, he's skiing better than ever.
Well, that's it. And because he is getting older, anytime he releases a mind-blowing clip where he's just going massive or charging, everyone's even more impressed, I think, that...
Yeah.
Like, I think he'll still be going hard at 50. Like,
oh, he will. The stuff he's about to release this winter is amazing. He spent 2 months in Teen at the end of the winter filming. So he's got a segment he's going to put out this fall winter, and it's incredible. Yeah.
The Kelly States, Kelly
Good comparison.
Well, exactly. No, it's amazing.
Cool, mate.
Thanks so much for the time, guys. Really appreciate it.
I was just going to say, there's anything else you want to add, mate, before we sign off? Thank you very much. That was really insightful. Matty, you got anything you wanted to add, mate? Or?
No, just I think it's super cool to hear the story of someone who started out skiing Falls Creek like much of the rest of us, and has built such an incredible career across multiple super inspiring horse's mouth. So
thanks so much, guys. It's lovely to talk to you. Yeah, really, seeing what's happening in the Australian ski industry at the moment, seeing some of these brands that are coming out, Pete over at Modest, who I work with, Sam over at Pyro that I work with, they're just fantastic. And there are other brands that I also kind of mentor at Oz who are starting things, which I think could be fantastic. And I think right now the ability to actually grow global businesses from somewhere Australia is something that I couldn't have done it 20 years ago. So just now with the ability to kind of start something there and get a global audience, I think is such a massive opportunity. So I just hope I can help some of the people kind of coming up. And get to the next stage.
Good on you, legend.
Amazing.
Well,
thanks, mate.
That's it for now, mate. We'll, I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon.
Definitely.
Cheers.
And maybe I'll see you in Japan this winter.
Hopefully.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys. Take care. Bye.
Lies, say them out them own style. A long time them they are now, them not just come. And it's been a long while. Them want a piece of the pie. Well, if a doublet and tune off a buy. Food to feed them family, that's no lie. Any idiot little sound try to test them a go die. Them not keep up. Look how long them a wait. A full time now, them get a slice of the cake. No sound fix because them bust through the gate. Through them play a good tune, and this a sound the people rate. Them we mash you up. All over the UK, America and JA. People want Kia Bamba in a dance. Them no business at all, could have friend or four. Before them play, them want them advance. That go sell out them soul for no diamond and gold. Big house, fancy clothes and car. Kia Bamba sound, them are the champion. Micah and Killer be a man.